Hey there, I'm Scott, the winemaking guy, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 8 of Help My Winemaking, the video podcast that helps people like you improve your winemaking savvy so you can make great tasting homemade wine. Lots to cover, so let's get started. So on today's show, follow-up trick to our carboy discussion from last week in episode 7, warning about the wine flu, and finally why acid is considered the backbone of your wine. So a quick follow-up trick to our carboy discussion. Didn't you know that the cap from the water bottle actually fits on top of the carboy? So if you've cleaned your carboy and you want to keep grime and dust out of it, just instead of throwing out the cap from your water bottle, stick it on top of your carboy and you're good to go. Also, a comment from one of my viewers from last week's episode, he mentioned that one of the drawbacks of using a plastic water bottle as a carboy is it's not big enough to hold your batch of wine. So something to think about. So thank you very much for that comment. Wine flu. So a friend of mine went to a party, a dinner party with his friends. They drank lots of wine and woke up the next day with flu-like symptoms. Symptoms include headache, nausea, body aches, sore eyes, and what he found helped was a cup of tea, a bit of a lie down. He rented a DVD. He took some Advil. And then he said, in worst cases, because it has happened before, a McDonald's Happy Meal has been known to help as well. He also wanted to pass on that it does mutate into the wine flu and is particularly common in men. So for all you fellow men out there, be careful, and it can quickly spread to their partners where the symptoms are detected as a serious case of eye rolling. So if you do drink a bit too much wine, careful, because you're likely to experience wine flu the next day. So you've been warned. Okay, so the biggest discussion today is why acid is considered the backbone of your wine. This is a big topic, so if you don't get it the first time, feel free to listen to this more than once, and I'll also, include some further reading at the end. So acid is important because lower acid levels don't age wine as well, are more prone to oxidation and spoilage. The right amount of acid helps provide a pleasing bite or tang to the finished wine, and certainly you experience that on your tongue. Low levels of acid produce bland-tasting wines, and high levels of acid produce a harsh taste to the palate. So I'm sure you've experienced this before. Now you want to focus when you're making your wine on the pH level, titratable acidity, also known as total acidity, flavor, texture, balance of tannins, and acids. Also, the ripeness of the fruit, don't you know, determines the level of acidity in the juice or wine. So that's why it's paramount importance when you pick your grapes and fruit that you make sure that it's the proper level of ripeness. It also has a big impact on the final taste and microbial stability of your wine, and indirectly affects the color of your wine. So, now what this all applies to is mainly all you people out there who make fruit wines as well as wines from fresh grapes. It doesn't really apply if you make wine from kits, because the level of acidity has already been dealt with. So if you only make wine kits and you're thinking, oh, I don't really need to listen to this anymore, stop what you're doing and listen, because if you make wine kits, you'll probably at some point down the road want to make fruit wines. So certainly good to know about in advance. So there are two ways to measure titratable acidity, also known, as I said before, total acidity. First method is the titration method, and this is really common. It's cheap, quick, and easy, but it does involve a bit of chemistry. And when you do it, you'll feel like you're one of those guys who works in the lab of CSI, because you could have a beaker and a little dropper to help you do your calculations. For all you CSI fans out there. Anyways, so you do this by adding a color changing indicator, typically phenolphthalein, to a mixture of water and wine. So imagine you've got water, you add your wine to it, and you add phenolphthalein. And basically why you have the phenolphthalein is as the pH level changes, once it gets to 8.2, you'll know you're in the right spot, because the solution will turn from clear to pink. So what you do is you take a base, typically sodium hydroxide, and you drop it in drop by drop till the solution, as I said before, goes from clear to pink. And so of course you're going to count the number of drops you put in, and by doing that you'll know how much sodium hydroxide you've added. So what you do is then you compare the volume of sodium hydroxide to the amount of tartaric acid needed using a fancy formula, which I'm not including, but I'll tell you where you can find it. I just didn't want to confuse people too much. All right, the other method is the pH method, and by some it's viewed to be more accurate. And the higher the pH value, the lower the level of acidity. And you can test it by using a method similar to the titration method, or even easier, you can use pH control paper. So think of it, go back to your days in high school when you did litmus tests with that paper. You can do the same thing with for wine, and it's called Precision pH Control Paper for wine, number 2844. And I bought mine at the local winemaking supply store for $3.99, so it's not expensive. So you basically dip one of those little test papers in your wine. It'll change color, and you match the color up to the color grid on your that comes with the test paper, and then you'll know how much pH it is. So when to adjust, you basically want to do it before you put your yeast, so at the very, very, very beginning of the process. And you don't want to worry about adjusting throughout the process, because this will could affect the long-term stability of your wine. And so if you make changes throughout your winemaking process, it could set off a chain reaction, and you really won't know about it till after your wine is bottled and it's too late to do anything. So don't fiddle too much with your wine. Do it at the beginning, and then you're done. So the typical total acidity level for reds is 5 to 6.5 grams per liter, and for whites it's 5.5 to 8 grams per liter. On the pH side, typically you're looking at 3.4 to 3.65 for reds, and for whites it's 3.1 to 3.45. So, how to adjust? You can use an acid blend, which typically includes citric, tartaric, and malic acid, or even better, just use tartaric acid alone, because acid blends add tartness, but also add some other acid types and proportions that might not be naturally present in grapes. Also, for example, citric acid can be metabolized by organisms in your wine that spoil your wine, and therefore used as an energy source and just spurs them on. So that's why most winemakers say stick to tartaric acid. Now, if you're making wine from fruit, then you can use grape juice concentrate as well, or instead of, I should say. Grape juice concentrate, usually available in red and white, and it adds tartness, but also water, carbohydrates, amino acids, nitrogen, tartaric acid, malic acid, sweetness, as well as a grapey flavor. So the bottom line is, if you're going to, all you want to do is increase the tartness level in your wine, then just use tartaric acid, or if you prefer, an acid blend. But before you do that, make sure you read the label of whatever you're adding, so you know exactly what you're adding. Now, if your head's spinning right now, and it might be, here's some additional reading for you. The Winemaker's Answer book by Alison Crowe, I highly recommend. She's a columnist for the Winemaker magazine, and you can buy it for between $15 and $20 on Amazon.com. I'll include a link at the bottom of my blog where this video is being shown. And also, you can get a free download from Dr. Frank Puzio, who put this 3-page primer on the 2 methods of measuring total acidity, which is excellent, and he said I could basically give it to you all guys for free. So thank you, Dr. Frank Puzio. I certainly appreciate it. And so if you have anything that you'd like to add to the group, please send it my way, and I'll be sure to give you full credit for it. So then you can email those to me, comments and the like, to tips@helpmywinemaking.com, or just reply to any email that you might get from me. So that's all the time we have this week. Hope you learned something new, and certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to listen. So to get more winemaking tips, actually I'm going to say join me as a friend or a fan on my Facebook page. It's fbook.me/winemaking guy is how you get to it. And obviously I have the winemakingguy.com blog, where you can sign up for my free 5-part winemaking course if you have not already. And if you do podcasting, you can check me out on iTunes as well. So join me next week, where I'll be discussing why keeping an eye on the temperature of your wine is important. So have a great week, folks. Thanks for joining me, and bye for now.